Hello everyone, my name is Yoav Waxman and I'm a professor of economics at Coastal Carolina University. Today we're going to cover lesson 2 in class about production and choice. There are essentially 3 types of economies, and by type I mean a system that determines how things are produced and distributed. The oldest type is a traditional economy. In a traditional economy, things are done the same way they've always been done. So if your father was a fisherman, you're likely to be a fisherman. If your parents were farmers, you're likely to be a farmer. If your father was a blacksmith, you're likely to be a blacksmith. Most people were mostly self-sufficient. They may have bartered for some goods, and things went on the way they've always have, with some minor changes. In a command economy, the government makes most of the decision. The government decides what is produced, how it's produced, when it's produced, and who's going to get the good. By contrast, in a market economy, decisions are made by interaction between consumers and producers. Consumers want things. Producers' job is to identify what consumers want and sometimes market to consumers to try to get them to want new things. And then the interaction in the market leads to an exchange. So there's no centralized decision making. A market economy is a decentralized system. All countries in the world, however, fall between command and market. There's some form of a mixed economy. So I want you to think about the following 5 entities, and you can figure out where they fall along this scale. North Korea, Sweden, Singapore, the United States, and a tribe in the Amazons. Now stop the video and figure out where to place them along the scale. Assuming that you work in these examples, North Korea is arguably the most command-oriented economy in the world. The government has almost complete control over the factors of production to decide what gets produced, how it's produced, and most importantly, who gets the goods. On the opposite extreme, we have Singapore, a small and very trade-oriented economy in Southeast Asia. In Singapore, there's limited government control, low taxes, and a lot of free commerce. The United States is also a very market-oriented economy, but not as much as Singapore. We do have higher taxes, we do have more regulations, and although we're a predominantly market economy, like all countries in the world, we have mixed element of government control and market control. Sweden is somewhere in the middle. Sweden is considered a socialist country. Although people are very much free to choose what work to have, how to produce things, when to produce them, where to produce them, the government also supplies a lot of public goods, including free higher education, healthcare for everyone, but it has high taxes as well. Some of the highest taxes in the world. And of course, a tribe in the Amazon would be considered a traditional economy. There are some tribes in places like the Amazon rainforest in Papua New Guinea where things are still done the traditional way. People just do things the way they've always done them. The role of an economy is to answer 5 basic questions. I'm going to give you the first one, and then you're going to pause the video and figure out what the other 4 are. One thing you want to figure out is what to produce, what product. Now pause the video and think about the other 4. Assuming that you thought what the other 4 are, the list is what to produce, how to produce it, meaning using what inputs, what technology, where to produce it, the physical location, or perhaps the internet, when to produce, at what period of time, and perhaps most importantly, who is going to get the good at the end. So there are 3 economic systems of different ways to answer these 5 basic economic questions. Now, in the economy, there are 4 major categories of resources, and one of them is actually subdivided into 2 other categories. These resources are labor, which are individuals who are willing and able to work, human capital, knowledge that can be used for production, physical capital, which are machines and tools that are human-made and are not found in nature, and finally, natural resources. Natural resources are also divided into 2 subcategories. These are renewable, resources that regenerate through a natural process at a fairly reasonable amount of time. Things like wind, geothermal energy, water that cycle through nature, but also things that grow, like timber and livestock, are all renewable. And non-renewable resources that are destroyed once used, and it takes the earth a very long time to recreate them. And these resources include things like petroleum, coal, mineral, and a variety of metals like silver, copper, and gold. Now I want you to look at the list of the items below and then decide which category they fit under. So the list is natural gas, a wood share, a legal immigrant, an MBA, and wind. Now please stop the video and decide which category each of these fit under. Assuming you stop the video, natural gas is a non-renewable natural resource. Once we use and burn natural gas, it's gone. It takes the earth millions of years to regenerate it. A wood share is physical capital. Even though it's made from wood, chairs are not found in nature. They don't grow in tree or can be dug from the ground. So anything that's human made is physical capital. A legal immigrant is considered labor. Anybody who's here who is willing and able to work, so unless the individual is severely handicapped or institutionalized, they would be considered labor as long as they're willing to work. An MBA is an example of human capital. It is a degree, but it represents knowledge that can be used for production. In this case, a Master of Business Administration will provide the knowledge to run a company or another type of organization. And finally, wind, which cycles from nature, is a renewable natural resource. The wind never ends. It cycles through the earth back and forth and therefore regenerates. Now think for a minute how each of these resources grow over time. Stop the video and list down for each category how they grow over time. Okay, let's go over the categories one by one. Labor grows in 3 ways. One is net birth, which means more people are born than die, and over time the population grows. 2, as mentioned earlier, is legal immigration. Immigrants typically come to a country when they're relatively young, and most of them are willing and able to work. And finally, labor can also grow when there's high participation rate. For instance, during the second half of the 20th century, we saw more and more women participate in the labor force, and consequently, the labor force grew. Since 2008, when baby boom started retiring, we saw a decrease in participation rate because individuals in their late 60s or 70s who are still eligible to work are now choosing not to work. Human capital is grown in one of 2 ways. One of them is formal education, like going to school, and the other one is on-the-job training. Physical capital, tools and machine, grow when companies invest. They invest in new tools, they invest in new machines, and consequently, the stock of physical capital grows. Natural resources are a bit tricky. Renewable resources like timber can be managed and even grow over time. But if we use them too quickly, they can easily be exhausted. Where non-renewable resources like coal or petroleum only decrease over time. The last concept we want to talk about for this lesson is the idea of production possibility frontier. A production possibility frontier is a curve that shows the amount of two product that can be produced given the resources and technology in the economy. And to do that, we're going to stop sharing the screen. And then we're going to go over to a different screen where I have a production possibility frontier ready to go. In this production possibility frontier, we see two goods, corn on the y-axis and rice on the x-axis. Any point inside the PPF, such as point A and B, are feasible, which means we can produce those amounts of good, but it's not efficient. Feasible and inefficient means that we can produce that point, but we're not using all our resources as we should. Points on the curve, like points C and D, are both feasible and efficient. Ideally, as an economy, we want to be on the production possibility frontier. And any point outside the PPF, like point E, is currently not feasible. We may be able to get to that point in the future if the PPF expands. And the PPF can expand if we have more resources, such as more legal immigration, higher labor force participation rate, building up more machines, developing human capital through training and formal education, or if technology improves. Take the example of corn. In the second half of the 20th century, we were able to more than double production of corn by using genetically modified organisms, better irrigation, and also fertilizers. So different technology allows us to increase production over time. The last thing you need to understand is how to measure the marginal cost. For example, if you ask to look at the marginal cost of rice at point D, what you want to think about is how much of one good you give up and how much of the good you're looking for you get. So the marginal cost is the cost of one more unit. And it can be measured in dollar amount, but it can also be measured in terms of the other good produced. So in this case, if we want to produce more rice, we start at point D. We're producing 9 tons of corn and 8 tons of rice. And move to the next point, we're only producing 5 tons of corn and 10 tons of rice. Now, to calculate the marginal cost, we have to look at the slope of the line. The difference between 9 and 5, or the rise, is 4, and the difference between 8 and 10, or the run, is 2. 4 over 2 is 2. So the answer is the marginal cost of rice at point D is going to be 2 tons of corn. Marginal cost is always in terms of the other good. For the good on the y-axis, we have to move up and to the left. So starting at point D, if we want to look at the marginal cost of corn, we have to get to the next point where we produce 6 tons of rice and 12 tons of corn. We would give up 2 tons of rice from 6 to 8 and increase our production of corn by 3 from 9 to 12. So the answer is 2 over 3, or the marginal cost of corn at point D is 2/3 tons of rice. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. If you have any question, you're welcome to contact me. Have a good day.